Hi, my name is Sean Aker. I'm the Regional Coordinator for Reducing Chronic Absenteeism here at the Willamette ESD, serving Region C, one of 8 regions that was put together by the Oregon Association of Education Service Districts. I do want to start with one story. As we rolled out this pledge to attend, we had a high school student at Staten High School who was really encouraged by this. He knew that he was a chronic absentee in the previous year, and as he went through this program in our first meeting at the end of the 20 days, he had attended 19 out of 20 days, and he said, I only missed one day, and he said, I'm not going to miss any other days except for my court dates. It was really important to him that he attended every day of school, not because court required it, but because he knew that it was impacting his life, and he had made some bad decisions which caused him to have the court dates. And so the way he put it to us was, as long as he attends school and he's on track and he's doing what he needs to do, he's going to be fine. But he will miss some dates for these obligations that he put himself into. So he really owned it, and that was a really special moment for us, just kind of getting this underway. So as of today's date, it's the beginning of May. He's missed 5.5 days. He's at 95% attendance, which means he's not only a regular attender, but anything above 95%, a lot of folks consider exceptional attendance, which is, it's just amazing. It's amazing that he's made such a substantial difference for himself. So during this presentation today, we'll talk about why short cycle phases are important, give you a little bit of background on chronic absenteeism and how we even developed this pledge to attend with North Santiam School District, specifically Staten High School, Staten Middle School, and Staten Intermediate School. I'll talk about some of the data outcomes with the whole group and then specifically with the high school, talk about the involvement we had, some of the things that we would encourage in terms of checking in on a regular basis, that we might have missed some things, but we had a process with what we did, but we certainly have some recommendations for sites that are implementing this. And then of course I've already shared one story, and we've got a couple other or at least one other story that I'd like to share with you towards the end. So the chronic absenteeism trend, it really does start early. The research is very clear. We've got high rates of chronic absenteeism in the early grades. Even though the chronic absenteeism rates come down in the middle grades, grades 4, 5, 6, they start to creep back up then in middle school and high school. And so one of the things that we know through the data and looking at this longitudinally is that higher rates of chronic absenteeism in the lower grades lead to lower rates of third grade reading, which then lead to that's another indicator for lower rates of ninth grade on track, which is an indicator of lower graduation rates. And then of course, if we're not graduating, then there's lower post-secondary outcomes. And we want to make sure that we're preventing poor post-secondary outcomes. If we want to encourage positive post-secondary outcomes or successful outcomes after high school, this process is, it starts early. So talking a little bit about the recruitment, Sherry Clark, our manager of career and college at the Willamette Promise, she invited me out to join the Willamette Promise booth at the Build It, Fix It, Grow It career fair in North Santiam School District. And I already had a previous relationship with the principal at North Santiam School District, so then it just became Mr. Kirby, what can we do to support you with this? And we kind of decided, well, let's do a survey. If we can create a survey that gives us some information about why kids attend or why they don't attend, or if they miss, why do they miss? So we wanted to provide that information. We also felt that it was important that I felt it was important that if kids were going to interact with me, and I'm not a business and I'm not recruiting for post-secondary, and I'm only providing information, that I give them maybe a little bit of an incentive to interact with me. So once we got the permission to access the student data, and I had that in hand, we asked them to participate with us. We said, hey, if you participate with us, if you answer this one question, you'll be entered into a drawing for some concession bucks. And this kind of has a dual purpose. It lets the kids know, hey, I can get something out of the interaction. It gives us an opportunity to provide them with some information, but then it also connects those kids, it re-engages them back into the school community by giving them something that they can only spend at the sporting events or whatever events they have at school where they sell concessions. So this was all worked out ahead of time. So now after they interacted with us, we give them some information about our attendance trend. You can see on a poster behind me, these are kind of the bullet points that we would provide to students. And we would ask them very simply, what's your trend? Most students didn't know what that meant, so that was kind of, again, our way as a catalyst to provide more information. Well, if you're a regular attender, if you're above 90%, you're more likely to graduate on time and have better post-secondary outcomes. If you are not above 90%, or if you're below 90%, then perhaps you could change your trend, and we can help you do that by participating in the pledge to attend. So then we'd ask them again, do you think you could change your trend? And students wouldn't know, and so then we would let them know if they're above 90 that you're a rock star attender, or if they're 90 or below, we would tell them you can change your trend. And then we would ask them, when they would say, when we kind of go through the conversation, would you like to pledge to attend? They might say, what's in it for me? And we would always say, if you decide to pledge to attend, or if you decide to participate with us. And then we would kind of list out. Now, early on, we didn't have all the incentives lined out. We just knew that if they could change their trend within 1 month, which is 20 school days, they would be attending 19 out of 20 days. And so we had in mind that we would give them a way to track their own attendance. We would incentivize every 5 days by giving them a raffle ticket, and then we'd incentivize, if they attended 19 out of 20 days, that we would actually provide them with something that they earned. And so with our connections, we were able to get Pape hats, which these camo hats the kids really seem to love in this district. But what we didn't know at the time, and we didn't really understand this until maybe the first or second week in, when we were checking on the student data, kids who missed school, 2 days of school, perhaps for reasons that they couldn't control within the first phase or within that 20 days, they'd be out of the program. They would not be able to be successful. And we wanted to make sure that we gave them an opportunity to reinvest in this attendance pledge and change their habits. And so we decided, we did a little bit of research on habits and forming habits, and 60 days seems to be a good amount of time to really change habits, or change the way that you go about doing something. And so what we found was, if we offered a 20-day pledge 3 times in a row, that would actually, calendar days is about 90, but student contact days was about 60 from the time we started, which was mid-September, to the time we finished, which was about mid-December, or right at Christmas break or winter break. So as we went through this, we kind of made some changes along the way, but we just wanted to make sure ultimately that we were giving more students opportunities to pledge to attend, and so going through another recruitment process in between phase 1 and 2, and then if kids were not successful, giving them an opportunity to continue to work on their attendance changes. So some other things that we realized, we want to make sure within these short cycle phases, and John Hattie talks a lot about this, students owning their own learning, or students taking responsibility for their learning. Students know the goal, students self-track, regular check-ins with somebody. In this case, for this program, the regular check-ins happen every 20 days with me. I would be there, or myself and one other person from our department that would come with us from the Willamette Promise. We would have these pizza lunches. We wanted to make sure that the rewards were meaningful, that the process was meaningful, and then give them, like I said, opportunities to try again, and then also allowed us opportunities to recruit more students. So altogether in 2 sites, we ended up with about 67 students who pledged to attend, after I think we had a total of around 230 individual student interactions. So we were able to share this message about what regular attendance is with over 200 individual students, and get 67 students to pledge to attend. For some of the data that I'll show here, I go back and forth between both sites, and then just focusing on the high school because they had some really great outcomes even after the pledge ended. And so we'll get to that. A couple things where we came up short in this program, which is where I would kind of recommend. So the check marks are things we did, and the green check box is something that didn't happen. And so whatever you're implementing, whether you decide to take a stab at trying something new, and you start with a small group, you have to make sure that those folks who are going to be interacting most often with kids are aware, and we want to make sure that our school staff is involved. In this case, we made sure school leadership knew, because we had to get a lot of agreements signed, access to students and all of that stuff. The students, obviously, because of those direct interactions, we sent a postcard to parents, and then the office staff who was helping us collect the data and pass information to students. When we invited students back to our pizza lunches, we wanted to make sure that the office staff was aware of these students and that we'd be coming in. So those folks were aware, but we didn't do a very good job of really including teachers during this pilot program. And so, like I said, students had an attendance tracker, parents had a postcard, we had the lunch invitation to the kids prior to the end of the program. Hey, you're doing this, keep it up, we'll see you at our pizza lunch for your rewards and for the drawing, just for showing up to school. But I think we missed out on that daily encouragement. And so that's something where with other sites and other schools, we've really been able to do a better job of plugging in with the teachers who interact with those kids. The next thing, just at the check-ins. So when we do our check-ins, at the end of the pledge period, and again, for this case, it was a 20-day pledge period. We've had other folks who do it for 5 days, others even do it for 10. But with the check-ins, we want to make sure that we invited them ahead of time, just as a reminder, get them to show up to school on that day. We provided pizza at no cost. We had door prizes, again, those raffle tickets. Every kid that showed up for at least 5 days was entered into a raffle ticket, and magically every kid won. We wanted to give information at that time about what it means to them. We wanted to ask them questions about why they were attending regularly or why they might have missed, and then we could give that feedback to the schools. And then, of course, there were the bigger incentives. Hey, I achieved 19 out of 20 days, or after phase 2, I achieved 37 out of 20 days, or after phase 3, I achieved 55 out of 60 days. We wanted to make sure that kids knew that even if they didn't make 19 out of 20, they could still make 37 out of 40, or they could still make 55 out of 60. And either way, they were doing a good job, and we were updating them on their own attendance. So they track it daily, and we're tracking it compared to last year and giving them the kudos for doing a good job and changing their attendance. So a couple of the data outcomes we saw right at the end of the pledge was from the same time period from 2018 to 2019, all the kids in school that were not participating in a pledge to attend, their average, the number of regular attenders rose by 4%. But with the pledge kids, those who pledged, and this is program-wide in both sites, 46% of our participants, there was a 46% increase in the number of regular attenders in the body of students, in the 67 students that participated in the program. 46% of them increased to be regular attenders. Breaking that down a little bit more, we see that's almost 50%. 1 out of every 2 students who pledged in this program became a regular attender at the end of the program. Looking a little bit more longitudinally and comparing the two groups, what you see in blue, those are the pledge participants, and that's an increase of their attendance rate. Now normally we're trying to move away from the attendance rate, again, because that looks at an average, and that's just the average days attended. And regular attendance, chronic absenteeism, that's where we're really looking at people, who's on track, who's not on track. An attendance rate looks at a group, and it's kind of like a false pat on the back. But if we look at the average growth between last year and this year, we see that even 1 month after the pledge, I'm not sure if I mentioned it, but we finished in December. So we finished our pledge pilot in December, but even 1 month after the pledge, our pledge participants actually increased their average attendance by 4.5% compared to the rest of the students, non-pledge participants in both sites, which is over, it's about 1,000 students, maybe 1,100 students, did have an increase in their average attendance rate, but not as significantly as our pledge participants. And specifically at the high school, 7 out of 10 of those students, as of May, are regular attenders. So on the regular attendant reports as of May 1, any of those students who are attending North Santiam or State and High School, 7 out of 10 of those participants with 75 days of enrollment attending on May 1, they are regular attenders. 7 out of 10. That's enormous. And when I say 7 out of 10, that's actually a breakdown. It's 69% of those regular attenders, 69.4% of those kids. 37 students at the high school, so 26 out of 37 are regular attenders. That's dramatic growth. And that's just because those kids participated in something. They knew the value to them was something different. At the end of the pledge, one of our biggest takeaways was simply this. Kids know that they fall behind when they miss school, and they're tired of falling behind. And so when we bring some incentives, a way to help them change their habits, they're the ones that are going to do the heavy lifting. In Staten High School, they have done some really cool things with CTE to engage some students. But this year, the only thing they did to specifically address chronic absenteeism was a pledge to attend for 3 months, between September and December. And in May, those outcomes are still huge. Those kids are still attending regularly. That's amazing outcomes. So if we were going to make recommendations, if I'm making recommendations for a site to implement this program, I want to make sure, number one, that the environment is warm and welcoming. We never know why a kid missed yesterday if I'm a classroom teacher unless I've had a conversation with the kid and the parents. So making sure that the environment is welcoming, and that goes for attendance secretaries, principals, whoever's going to engage with that student when they come in. If they're late, hey, I'm glad you're here, not why are you late? We don't know what happened in the morning. Was it a tough morning? Something happened, argument at home, loss of a pet, loss of a loved one. We just don't know the reasons, so we want to make sure it's welcoming. When these kids are participating in a pledge, it goes back and forth. Some kids want to be recognized that they're part of a group, others don't. And so we need to be sensitive to that, and we need to know that we do want to praise those kids when we see them, those kids that are struggling with attendance. I mean, all kids we want to praise, but those kids that are struggling with attendance who we see are making a difference in their own lives by coming to school regularly, we want to make sure we give them little attaboys, and we don't need to make it overt. We can make it very specific to them, just to go by, glad to see you, those kinds of things. We certainly want to communicate what happens in our classroom ahead of time. If we're prepared ahead of time, and kids know, like, hey, I'm going to have to miss something, or if we're prepared ahead of time with what we're going to do as classroom teachers or in our school environment, when a kid misses, it's so much easier for us to guide them when they come back. Welcome back. Here's one thing that you can focus on so that you can get caught up. I realize you missed my class. You missed 7 classes yesterday, and it's going to take you a while, so let me help you in here. And then we want to make sure that we're calling parents of kids who frequently miss, making sure the parents know attendance matters, that we miss their kids, that we're here to help them, and when they get back, we're ready for them. When we have those conversations with parents, if there's needs that we don't know about, then we want to make sure we're accepting that information, we're being empathetic, we're not trying to solve their problems, we're not trying to be sympathetic with them and say, oh my gosh, I totally understand, just wow, I had no idea, that sounds really hard, just remember we're here to support you, thank you for sharing, things like that. And then when we get some information that's very specific or that might have a real impact on the student's performance in school, whether it's attendance or behavior or something else, we got to make sure we're reporting that to our leadership. When our leadership knows, then they can start collecting some information and say, wow, we've got a very similar, a similar type of thing going on with many of our students. Let's address that issue, or let's seek help to address that issue. 70% of the attendance drivers are related to the social emotional environment. So that's how do we make kids feel welcome? How do we make sure that parents feel comfortable calling or having contact with teachers and administrators? How are we making sure that our classroom environments are engaging for the kids? How do we recognize when a student's perception is causing them to believe something when that may not be what we see as the reality, but their perception is their reality? And so how do we make sure that we're making that connection with our kids and connecting to 100% of our kids? This has kind of led to another project within our region that I'm happy to share regarding a social emotional tool called Ruler. But it is just, when we address those social emotional needs of our kids, of our families, when we're being culturally sensitive and culturally aware in our approach, we can see some dramatic improvements. The last story I'd like to share before I close out here, within the same district, at an elementary school, it's a K-8 actually, they do student-led conferences. And at these student-led conferences, they prep the kids ahead of time, and they give them their folder, and they have their they have their behavior data, they have their academic data. And so as a first grade teacher was sitting down with one of her first grade students, she said, well, it looks like you're all prepped. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about at your conferences? And the little girl told the mom, or told the teacher, she said, I want to quit being late to school. And so the teacher said, well, let me talk with the principal and we'll get your attendance data, your tardy data, and we'll see if we can present that. Are you okay talking about that and just telling your mom that during conferences? And the girl said, yes, I'm okay with that. It's like the coolest thing. I wish I had tissue in here.
You get a little misty?
Yes. Okay.
It's good though.
So at conferences went well. The principal reported the conferences went well, and that the young girl Maddie was able to tell her mom at that time, after going through the academics and behavior and everything was looking good. She'd actually only missed 5.5 days. She pulled out her tardy data and she'd already been late 55 days this school year. And so the girl told her mom, I want to quit being late to school. And her mom looked at the data and she said, I had no idea that I had her late that many times. And so the principal had already planned with the teacher and the teacher with the student that if we can get Maddie to school on time for the 19 out of the next 20 days, then the whole class gets a root beer float. The mom was on board with that, and God dang it! And this little girl gets her root beer float. I'm filming this. It is the 8th. Her class gets root beer floats tomorrow because this girl has been on time every day since she started this. And it's a different pledge. It's not for the students in this case. It is for the parents, and sometimes our parents forget how important these unstructured times before school, or what is learned in school, either in the classroom or in between classes or before school. And so as we talk about this pledge to attend, and I'm happy to share these stories and this information, the biggest thing is we're raising awareness, we're helping people, we're helping districts really address the needs of our students and our families to change lives. The principal reports that Maddie's a totally different person. She comes in, she's excited, her hood's off. She tells her, Mrs. Reister, I'm here. It's a great story. I'm happy to do this work. And so, I didn't have a lot to do with this other than raising awareness in this district and then letting this site do it their own way. But like I said, I'm here for questions. If you guys have any questions at all about a pledge to attend, how you think you might make it work, I can certainly talk with you directly, or I can speak through a regional coordinator, one of my colleagues, and help you support a program like this, starting small and then scaling up if you need. So I appreciate your time, and I hope that we can continue to change lives.
Hey, Sean.
Yeah, hi, Erica.
Hi. Hi, guys. My name's Erica Hertz, and I'm here helping Sean today make this video. And while Sean was talking about the parent support is crucial to this initiative, I myself had something to share. It's a little embarrassing, but it's the truth. So I have a high school student, a son, and we've worked really hard, and I'm grateful to share that at this time he doesn't have any academic issues or social issues, and there's really no strong reason why he should not be at school. But I'm guilty of letting him stay home when he just doesn't feel like going, and that's not okay. And I didn't think twice about it until we started this initiative, and I started working closely with Sean and seeing these results and seeing that it truly does matter, just like it says, every day matters. So now when there are those grumbles about not going to school, I say, shake it off, it's fine, we'll all get to school and work, we'll feel a lot better. And I'm happy to report he hasn't missed any school since, I believe, the beginning of the school year. And now it's a habit.
That is
There's
awesome.
no option for him to stay home, which it lands on me. I understand that. That was me letting him. So
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, that is awesome. That is awesome.
It's great stuff.